Halloween 3 Season of a Witch is an incredibly unusual film in that it is part of a long-running franchise that was an attempt, a failed attempt I might add, to take that franchise in an entirely different direction. The first two Halloween films had revolved around Michael Myers and were slashers, but the end of Halloween 2 is kind of dead. Now I know in horror movies, the antagonist is almost never dead and always liable to return, but John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who produced Halloween 3, refused to return if the series continued to revolve around Michael Myers, feeling the series could become an anthology series with different characters revolving around the Halloween holiday. This was actually Carpenter's original plan, but he was forced by the studio to bring Myers back for the sequel rather than his preferred idea of having a new antagonist and cast of characters. To be honest, I think having an anthology series based around Halloween is a great idea, and it kind of sucks that we only got one of these anthology-style Halloween movies before the entire premise was dropped due to poor critical reception and a disappointing box office return. With Michael Myers returning in Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, I can see why Halloween 3 failed though, because it isn't a Halloween franchise movie. Imagine Star Wars released a film and it had no stars or wars in it. That's exactly how Halloween 3 feels as a Halloween film. Halloween films have Michael Myers and are slashers. This is neither of those things, so I can see why it failed on release. I can also see why it has gone on to be somewhat of a cult hit. Let's take a look and see why. As I said before, this is an entirely standalone film, so it revolves around a completely new narrative, that being a somewhat witchcraft-themed sci-fi thriller yarn. We follow Dr. Dan Chalice, played by Tom Atkins, who is investigating a series of strange deaths that happened at his hospital. In this endeavour, he's joined by Stacey Nelkin, who is Ellie Grimbridge, the daughter of a man earlier pursued and murdered by mysterious men. Travelling to small-town Santa Mira, California to investigate the Silver Shamrock Novelties Company, they uncover a mystery involving witchcraft, a stolen part of Stonehenge, no, really, and a plot to murder children just for the nihilistic hell of it, really. Although the film ditches the character of Michael Myers and the slasher genre from the prior films in the series, it keeps the tension and suspense those films employed. The plot is often described as an incoherent mess, and I have to disagree. The plot is entirely coherent and entertaining enough, but I was never bored and fairly invested into exactly what was going on in this small town. The actual plan is admittedly absolutely bonkers and wouldn't have a cat in hell chance of success, but it has some fairly interesting social commentary going on in regards to rampant consumerism and the advertising of goods to children, which in the year 2022 probably makes less sense to a modern audience, seeing as kids are a massive advertising demographic, but to an audience in the 80s, I think they should have picked up on this way more than they may have done in reviews. The evildoer's entire plan is to make cursed Halloween masks, run 24/7 catchy adverts on TV to sell loads of these masks to kids, and then on Halloween night send a signal to the masks via the science of TV signals and computer chips, and turn the kids' heads into insects and snakes. Yeah, now I've written that down on paper, it makes almost zero sense as an actual plan, but as a comment on the Reagan administration's changes to advertising laws around advertising to children, makes perfect sense. The other fairly obvious social commentary going on is to do with automation and the loss of comfortable middle-class manufacturing jobs in the US. We see one of the original inhabitants of the town who tries to bum a drink off Dr. Dan because he's now an unemployed alcoholic, lamenting that the Silver Shamrock factory is entirely staffed by out-of-towners. Those out-of-towners are all androids in actuality. Then they rip his head off due to his threats against the factory, which I think is a fairly blunt statement on that social issue. I enjoy these kinds of ridiculous social commentaries you get in these kinds of films, and here is no different. I'm always here for this kind of thing. Somewhat linked to the evil plan, the ending of the film is also incredibly nihilistic, which is something else I always enjoy. Apparently this is something critics and audiences in the 80s hated. Personally, I love it when an evildoer wins for once, or at least seems to. Although the violence is toned down and the levels of gore aren't that high, we do get a few great and fairly shocking scenes, including a woman having her face lasered off, and the aforementioned guy having his head ripped off. The special effects are what you'd call cheap looking, but certainly aren't the worst I've seen in recent months on this channel. Both the two leading actors in Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin are great together. Tom Atkins is like a really cheap man's Tom Selleck, a man probably born at age 45 with that exact tash. A man you can literally smell through the screen. A mixture of stale beer, a packet of Woodbines, and a splash of Old Spice. The kind of man you just don't get to see in movies anymore as a leading man. A real man's man. The kind of man who out of nowhere, and with zero reason for anyone to believe this is a state of affairs that could ever occur, has sex with Stacey Nelkin's character, who is really cute and bubbly and looks at least 30 years younger than her co-star, to the point the scriptwriter felt the need to include this line of dialogue.
Wait a minute. How old are you?
Relax. I'm older than I look.
Now it might seem like I'm saying the opposite of they are great together, and I kind of am, because at no point does their sexual relationship make much sense, but they do have a great on-screen chemistry, which I can't quite put my finger on or describe as to why they work together as a duo, but I was genuinely invested in the two characters, and I think a lot of credit should go to the two actors for that. The other notable thing to talk about here is the score, which is a wonderful mix of 80s synth and annoying 80s TV jingles that you'll be singing for days after you view the film. In the end, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is an entirely serviceable 80s horror that I think would have probably been largely forgotten had it not been the third film in a now 40-year-long much-loved franchise. I can see why they thought it could work. An anthology series set on Halloween has yearly potential and almost endless stories to be pulled from, which means box office gold. They just chose to do it in an already established franchise that people had expectations of what a Halloween movie was, and when those expectations weren't delivered, they didn't like it. So I can see also why this failed entirely, and for many years was the unspoken of black sheep of the Halloween franchise. In the end, is Halloween 3 worth watching? Hell yes! Just don't expect a Halloween franchise movie, because it isn't one. Well, if you enjoyed that, then please like, comment, and even consider subscribing, because next week, or maybe the week after, as I'm actually going on holiday, so I might not have time next week anyway, at some point soon enough, I will be back with Sorcerer.